Aileen, thanks for doing this. We've known each other. We probably don't dare to say how long, but we probably did our first projects together maybe 12,
About
13 years ago.
2008, so, or maybe
2008. All right. Okay. Yeah.
a long time ago.
Let's not say that out loud. Yeah. And we were very closely together whilst in Hillingdon Council. For people who do not know Hillingdon Council, if you ever been in Heathrow, you actually also been in Hillingdon Council because that's the part of London. Explain, if you can, what your role was there. What did you do?
Okay, so my role there was to change the way in which we worked across Hillingdon. So I came in at a time when there were lots of challenges around government cuts, challenges with how we're working, with recruiting people, nothing different to what we've done now, really. There was really significant cuts that were being made, and Hillingdon had a really unique perspective on things in that they wanted to invest in assets and in the community. So with new libraries and swimming pools and things like that. They also had an ambition to have no rates increase. And for the whole time I was there was never a rates increase. I think it was for 13 years. There was never an increase, which is pretty impressive. But more importantly, what they wanted to do is maintain their frontline services and reduce the cost of delivering services, but maintain at least, but generally improve the services that it was providing to people living in Hillingdon. And that's what drove the program.
One way or the other, recognizing that if you do the service really well, all of a sudden it becomes a lot cheaper as well. But it does mean making some tough choices or doing some things quite differently, and not necessarily sticking with all the legacy stuff. And you've done some really radical stuff there to bring that about. You initiated a big children's services program, children's pathway program, I think it was officially called, and add all kinds of different elements to that. And it started off by really understanding what happens in the life of a family and mapping those out. Our colleague Daniel kind of did that. And then you decided, you got the okay to actually kick off a whole program with some interesting principles. We were joking earlier that we didn't use the word agile, but there were some agile principles underneath that, because otherwise people will run a mile or they think it was an IT project, etc. What do some of those agile principles that actually were applied in the children's services program, what do they mean to you?
Yeah, I think largely it's around building trust with the users of the service so that they will be open and share their stories. But it's also building trust within the organisation and delegating decision-making, and to the lowest possible level, I would say. So you're just giving people the remit to go out and do things, test things out, and failing fast is also another element of it. And I think that's good. If you give people the confidence to try things out and know that they're doing it in a safe environment, then you are going to make much better progress than you otherwise would. I think it's also respecting each other. So, and respecting the people that you work with, respecting the people you are providing services for is really important. And I think building relationships is essential. If you're not going to focus on building those relationships, you're not really going to deliver the sorts of outcomes that you want to do. So for me, it's all about building trust, building relationships, and sharing experience. Also think it was a mess, children's services. And there was a lot of pressure in that sector. There were never enough people. There were a lot of very kids with really complex family backgrounds, with complex problems. There were families who didn't feel that they were supported well. So the work that Daniel did with the team was really important to get that framing. And that enabled us to sort of look at a much more radical approach to children's services then, which was really about early support and having your best people up front. So triaging what happened. Because it was such a change, I think you almost have to continue to do what you've always done on one side while you build something new. And that something new can be something very different. And I think having the freedom to do that enables you to test things out, to see if they really work. And so we built a single pod with Patrick, who led it. So he was one of the social workers. And I think you also need to take the people who want to try something different. There's always a lot of resistance, and you've got that 20% of people who are going, I want to be part of this. and other people you take. That's how you drive the change as well. And then other people start looking over the fence and going, yeah, I want to be part of that. So we went from 1 pod to 2 pods to 3 pods to 4 pods, which was excellent. And it was good for the workforce because they felt valued. They knew that what they were doing was making a difference. But most importantly, it was making a difference to the children and families that we were providing those services for and supporting.
Yeah. So it is about building trust and relationships with the people on the front line. That's a terrible word, of course, because it's not a war. It should be a partnership. But anyway, it's like a front line with their residents and giving them the time and the space to kind of do that and helping them. But then also trust and relationships within the services so that they're trusted to do the good job and you leave them delegated to that lowest level. And I think that's, those are 2 incredibly important things. And then to develop all this, so that's almost like we will call it agile at that level of a team and the organization, but then actually working that through with services by starting small. And I even remember that I think that we did not necessarily start with a pod of about 6, 7 people. I think at the time, the children's services go like, no, we don't have time for this. Yeah, you don't understand why these people coming over to us with post-its and transformational people like, no, we need to do a job. So we essentially started just with Patrick. Patrick was the prototype called Patrick, and then they saw it working, and then there was another person added, and then it became a pulse, and then it became another pulse, and another pulse, and another pulse. Which in the end, everybody was kind of convinced that it might be something into this.
Yeah,
that was what I was partly aware of, but you were mostly dealing with this, was that it needed some air cover and it needed some space to develop. So these relationships and the trust and the new ways of working could build. While lots of people say, no, this is not how we do things, or we don't have time for it, etc. And I think sometimes that's the secret sauce in there. And you being, I think people in Hillingdon, they, by the way, still do very much remember you for good reasons. Like it was a very dynamic time. People still catching their breath, maybe from that time. And I'm really curious, what did you do to give that air cover to allow those prototypes and that incubator kind of thing and those ideas to flourish? That's a hard question, I know, but
I guess we couldn't continue doing what we'd done. We had some ambitious savings targets as well, but most importantly, it was about selling the idea to people that it was about them wanting to come to work. There were a lot of miserable people in Hillingdon at the time. So it was around changing how they work so that it enabled them, it gave them back some enthusiasm for what they were doing and helped them feel supported. And I think a lot of people felt quite isolated, felt really burdened. So it was about taking that burden off people. And I think that was the key driver for me. So if people are feeling good about the work that they're doing, they're going to be, working with people in a much better way. So I think that for me, that was it. And I do think that part of what I've done over time, it's about selling the idea, but I really believed in the idea that people should enjoy coming to work. We should be making a difference and we should be cutting costs because it was a cost that residents had to meet. So all of those things coming together led to much better outcomes for everyone. So you have to have an eye for what everyone wanted to achieve. And of course, the leader of the council was happy because he got a 0% rates increase every year. So politically, it was a good thing to do as well. But the most important thing, and the thing that always drove me, was making a difference. If it was a customer interaction or whether it was the outcome for a child and their family, it was important for that person or that group of people. So I think that was the thing. And also what was also evident is we worked in a lot of silos. And this is interesting because I see that here now. But bringing everyone together enabled us to do more with less, definitely.
Yeah.
So I think that was the key driver and that's what helped us to be successful. And I think it is a sales pitch. If I'd been in the private sector, I probably would have been really wealthy.
Yeah. But even that, because I think but that's exactly the motivation that is for you, but maybe that you're also communicating. People are not actually signing up to do children's services work and adult social care work or homelessness work, etc., to become rich. They kind of want to make a difference. And if you then can explain to them, sell it if you want, that no, actually how you're doing it kind of re-energizes, re-motivates you why you joined that job in the first place.
Exactly.
Then that really helps.
And enabling them to focus on doing the thing that they actually aim to do, rather than getting caught up in the bureaucracy and bullshit that exists.
So that's an interesting one. So cut all the bureaucracy busted a bit to be able to enable to do this.
Oh, my aim in life is to cut red tape.
Yeah. I let the people on the front line do what they're good at and just make sure that they do that. But is it interesting what you're saying? So what people might not know is that the leader of the council in Hillingdon was very hands-on in a lot of the decisions. Also an accountant by background, or I think he was still practicing as an accountant maybe.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you were able to square that circle in saying, actually, let's make sure that the people get to do their job that they want to do, but at the same time, satisfy the people who need the finances and make sure that those two groups get satisfied.
The leader of the council was very clear as well. Ray and Jean, who was the deputy chief executive.
And Ray was the leader of the council. Yeah.
The leader of the council. They always kicked off every new program that we ran. They were fully behind it, fully supportive. And I think that made a huge difference as well to people to know that it wasn't just me coming in and saying it. The council wanted to change how it worked. And one of the things he would always say is, if you don't want to get on the bus, that's fine, but there won't be a job for you in the future. He was very, and he was very harsh on middle management. He wanted to protect frontline services. It makes me laugh because this is what the Prime Minister in New Zealand goes, protecting frontline services for middle managers, not so important. I think part of it was around our levels and spans of control and reducing those over time as well, which is really important to actually have an effectively functioning organisation where decision-making was delegated to the appropriate level.
Yeah, you quickly mentioned the work by Daniel. It was kind of to say, you know what, why don't we take a handful, I think a half a dozen of families, volunteering, of course, and try to see what happened in their life over the last decades or 20 years. Not only the children, but the parents and maybe even their parents, and see what kind of happened. And these were people who had enormous amounts of difficulties and needed a lot of help, and things didn't go that well for them. There's a lot of complexity in there. And I sort of remember all the walls with all the post-its and the lines, etc., that we've taken people kind of through.
Post-its. Yeah, I think that's really, I think that's really important. That's always driven everything I've done, I think, since then, because it was probably early customer journey mapping, understanding pain points, looking for, where the problem areas and challenges really were. And I think the other interesting thing is, and this has come through again, is that once you've talked to, and say, 5 or 6 families, the patterns are the same. The issues are similar. You don't have to go out and talk to 1 million people. You just need to have a few core people. You walk through their stories. And I think being able to, and I remember walking Jean and the leader through the stories that those and understanding the points of failure, and there were many of them, and that lack of integration in terms of services. And so that actually was a key driver for moving things forward. So that helped everyone, I think, to go, no, we're not doing the best job here. There's a lot that we could do better. Let's do that. And so that triggered the program, and it gave people a much better understanding of the impact we were having on those families. And it wasn't always good, and other people as well. And I think this, and a lot of the work that I did subsequent to that, looking at it, taking a systems approach to things, is, we work together, we get much better outcomes.
And I don't know how it is in New Zealand. Like, I think here in the UK, people are still struggling with that, of course. But I remember in Hillingdon that out of looking at those life journeys, seeing what happened to those families over time, it was clear how many interactions everybody had with all kinds of public services, including mental health, including the police, including everybody.
Yes.
And then I'm sure the leader of the council with his accounting glasses on would go like, that's a lot of money in public services. And I also remember, I don't know whether that was a consequence of that, he actually took up different roles wider within Hillingdon across the different partner agencies to kind of get some of these things rolling.
Definitely. And so I think it becomes more important that there are other options available for people in the community as well. And that's something that people forget. People are often quite inward looking. And so it's really important to just look beyond that and remember that these people have had poor experiences with formal services. They don't want to engage. And so you need to, that's where working together becomes really important, because they will engage at an appropriate time, or if you can provide the services that add value to them. I think that's really important as well. And I think being focused on what you're trying to do is make a difference to people's lives, have a positive difference. And I think it's really important that we keep that in mind whenever we're doing anything. It's not about us. It's about the impact that we have. And so we need to focus on that.
Right. If you would give advice to somebody starting their first project in homelessness or in children's services or whatever else it is, what do you say? Actually, out of my experience, just keep these things in mind.
Yeah, I think it's do what's going to work for the organization. And I think that's really important. So language is really important as well. Use the wrong language, you switch people off. So if agile's been used to death and hasn't worked, stop using it. Use the principles of agile, but use different language for that. Okay. I think it's also start small and build it up. You need to show success and you need to be visible. The visibility of the program is really important as well. And I think there's only really 4 steps, and you can call them whatever you like. But the first step is understanding. So that discovery piece. The second step is testing stuff out with people who want to test it out and creating almost another separate team or a separate environment where they can succeed in that space and share that learning. And then moving into implementation, that's where you're scaling up and doing things differently. And then there is, I hate the word continuous improvement. Most people know that I hate that, but it is about continuing to make improvements to what you're doing, to looking at new opportunities, looking at new models and things like that. But fundamentally, what underlies all of this is think about who you're doing it for. Start small, scale up, build trust in your teams, build trust in the organization, build trust with the people that you're trying to support. Then you'll get honest answers and you'll get much better outcomes and you'll get much better engagement from within the organization. I see so often people making changes that don't involve the people who are impacted. And I think that is the worst thing you can possibly do.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And just for clarification for the people who haven't worked with you, is that when you're saying actually, let's do some discovery and then do some testing, the discovery, I don't think you will ever have done a discovery that lasted longer than 3 months because it's usually 2 weeks or whatever else, or a week before starting to test some stuff out. And then you learn some more and you test on that. So get going. Yeah. Like you're saying, like test things out.
Bit of pace is important. And you can't be 100% confident, but your gut will tell you you're heading in the right direction. And that's what matters. And then you improve and improve. So you're building on stuff. You go. I think that is really critical as well.
Yeah. Out of all that time in Hillingdon, or maybe others, is there a certain story of a customer or a colleague or a quote that kind of you got like, oh yeah, that was interesting. That kind of stayed with me.
Yeah. That's a tricky one, isn't it?
I should have prepped you for that. I should have.
Yeah. This is not when I was at Hillingdon, but when I was at somewhere else, which is a description of my style of working, I guess. And this guy said to me, you're like a bus. You're just like driving on through, and I'm behind you picking up all the pieces and making sure it all. Someone else said I should be, one of your colleagues actually said I should be a dictator of a small country. And I still think that would probably be.
You can tell me afterwards who that was. And
But I think overall, I don't think there is any one story. I think there are many, many stories.
Yeah.
And I think overall it's about building trust with the teams that you're working with. And at Hillingdon, though we worked broadly with you and your teams, over time, we got to a core team of about 4 people.
Yeah.
And we worked across the organization and delivered significant change. And we got to a second phase as well. So going back and rethinking it and doing things differently. And we knew where the improvements could be made. So I think that's the thing. It is, and to be successful at that, you need to trust each other. Ultimately, and trust is the thing that drives successful change at the end of the day.
Yeah, and part of that trust is also then it's an interesting one that you're saying. Kind of that small team who drives the transformation doesn't need to be an army, but at the same time, you need somebody who's picking up all the pieces while the bus is driving. And you need somebody else to kind of clear the road a little bit. So you need somebody else. So it is, it's an interesting team.
Someone said that, defending your position, basically. Not defending, but celebrating what you're doing, selling what you're doing and why you're doing it. But most importantly, always be driven by what's the difference we're going to make. That's ultimately, it's not about you. It's not about the organization. It's about the difference you're making. That's the important thing in this.
Right. It's good thing to close with. Thank you so much for this.
That's okay. Thank you.